Hi everyone, just a reminder that part 2 of the case is opening shortly. For part 2 of the case, if you take a look at the case overview or the link attached in my announcement or just in your assignments, you will see that part 2 is available now. Now, one of the most important things you can do is review part 1 of the graded assignment. I've made a separate short video about that to check your adjusted trial balance and correct any errors. That is a vital first step for this. The next thing I would encourage you to do is to download this part 2 file. Just like with part 1, the part 2 file has Excel tabs that have each of the entries that you have to enter into Canvas, and you will be uploading this file in order to show your work as you go through. Now we have several adjusting entries on the first tab, and then the inventory, bad debt, depreciation, and accrued interest journal entries are on their own tabs. So for the adjusting journal entries for these, there are a few items that I'll point out as we go through. I did go ahead and record a short video for the first 2 journal entries to help point out where in the Chapter 3 textbook information, lectures, and slides you should look. I recommend starting primarily with the Chapter 3 slides. For examples of these adjusting journal entries and for help understanding it, you can search for keywords and it'll help you get to it a little bit more quickly than the textbook. Now, for some of these other items like inventory and depreciation, in addition to the adjusting journal entry information, you may also need to go back to the chapter where we covered the calculation piece of those to make sure that you understand the initial calculation and the difference between LIFO and FIFO, right? Okay. I have, again, posted a walkthrough telling you what numbers should be in this unadjusted trial balance. If you have it all correct from the first part, then you're set on that. The adjusting journal entry debits and credits are going to go in columns F and G. And then columns H and I are going to combine what you had in columns D and E with columns F and G. So keep in mind that if you have a debit unadjusted trial balance and you have an adjusting entry credit, you are going to subtract the credits and add the debits for that, okay? If the balance is normally a credit balance, say you had $500 here, you had a $250 debit, okay, you are going to have a let's change this number so it's a little bit, so you don't have the answer that's the same as the problem, okay? A credit balance that is reduced by a debit to that balance will be a smaller credit balance, okay? A credit balance where the adjusting entry is an additional credit entry is going to be a larger credit balance. Okay, so you have to understand what the usual balance of the account is, whether it's a debit or credit. You have that because you have your unadjusted trial balance, ending balance, and then you need to increase or decrease it depending on that with your adjusting entries in F and G. That new total for H and I is going to be what you use on your financial statements. Now, one way for you to do the financial statements is just to go through and link right off the bat your trial balance, account balances, right, for sales to the income statement tab and do the same thing for your returns and allowances, your cost of goods sold, etc. All right, that is not a bad place to start, but I think that it's important to get to your journal entries quickly so that you can ask any questions and get help on the ones that you get stuck on. I would like to see everyone in this class absolutely maximize their points on part 2 of the case. Part 3 of the case is much simpler. It's much shorter. It's going to be given after you've left for Thanksgiving break, so we didn't want to weight you down. So there is a lot of information in here. Now, as far as the actual Canvas quiz itself, I see a lot of students on the paper version that got very confused by all of these cells here. So on the Canvas version, if we come down into it, I'll point a few things out on that. Now, on this Canvas version, it is very similar to the first part. Again, you're going to choose a file to attach your work to. And then we've also asked again that you use a very specific format for your journal entries so that the auto grading works and it gives us a quicker turnaround time. Notice on these adjusting journal entries, there's no date. These are adjusting journal entries. They happen at the end of the year. We all know when they happen. You don't need to date them for this part. Okay. So if, for example, for this first journal entry, you're going to debit account ABC for $10,000, and you are going to credit account DEF for $10,000. I need you to make sure that you are checking your spelling on the account names against the chart of accounts and using the correct account name. And I also would very much appreciate it if you would go through, just like we did on the first one, and drop in those pound signs, because then when this grades, it's going to give you the full 1.42 points, and it's going to be a much faster process for me to go back through and check any where students didn't get the full points and make adjustments as needed. And as before, I did go through, and if someone had 10,000 right here without a zero on the end and 10,000 here, I did go back and make an adjustment to give you points for that. But please minimize those. It makes grading take substantially longer. Okay. On some of these journal entries, you're going to be asked to enter in different amounts. Those are an exact replica of what is on your Excel file. So notice you got rounding instructions, you got a template to help you walk through the calculation of some of these items, and then you've got all the PowerPoints and the graduate assistants and the faculty to help you troubleshoot any questions that you have as you get into these. Okay, you can also make an appointment with the tutors in the Learning Center, but you may not be able to get one quickly. So the walk-in graduate assistant hours in person and online are going to be very helpful for this. They do have solutions, and they've got some training on how to do it. So again, you're going to have your check figures for your adjustments and your adjusted trial balance, and you're going to upload your file. And then on the financial statements, you just need to type in, right, your amounts. And again, that is where I would also continue to use your Excel file. So these amounts from your financial statements, if you come back to the Part 2 instructions and file page, there is a financial statement preparation reference diagram that I think is very helpful. This is straight out of the textbook, but notice that we're using the revenue and expense accounts from the trial balance. We're preparing the statement of retained earnings, the balance sheet, and the statement of cash flows. And you can see here that these lines are telling you, right? Notice this should look familiar, right? Cash, accounts receivable, dividends, revenue, expenses, very similar to your Excel file, your adjusted trial balance. They're telling you where these numbers should go. So while these aren't the numbers we're using in our case, you've got a diagram without going back to the slides or the textbook or anywhere else. We've done the same thing with this adjusted trial balance reference diagram. Okay. And you can see how the unadjusted trial balance from Part 1, again, these are not our numbers. This is from an example from the book, but it's very helpful, are being increased or decreased depending on what the adjustments recorded are. Okay. So that's generally speaking what your Excel file should look like when you get done. And then there's also just a reminder about the chart of accounts and about when items are debits and when items are credits to increase or decrease the value of an account. So the last thing I'll show you is if you take a look at this accounting cycle, okay, we've analyzed the transactions, we've journalized them, we've posted them to our T accounts, and we've prepared the unadjusted trial balance in Part 1. Now we're doing adjusting journal entries and posting those to our trial balance. You don't have to go back to T accounts. Okay. Once you've prepared the adjusted trial balance, after we've posted these adjustments, then we can prepare the financial statements. The last part of the case is going to be to prepare the post-closing trial balance and close the accounts. That's going to be in Part 3. So the part we're focused on here is 5, 6, and 7.